Doesn't have to be here. Jayo Nishingadev, 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 Jai Nishingadev. Shri Nishinga Bhagavan ki jai, Bhakti Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Satayani Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, today we're going to talk about how not to feel bad about feeling bad, or how to feel good about feeling bad. Thank you. I need a songbook. Does anyone have a songbook? Or I need someone to go online and get Gopinath song, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I want to read that. Gopinath mama nivedana shuna. This is let's see if it's in here. It actually, okay, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gopinath. Okay, I want to read the translation. This is interesting what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. It makes it sound like if you didn't understand transcendental emotion, this song makes Bhaktivinoda Thakur sound like a very unhappy person, if it's seen from the material perspective. So, Lord of the Gopinath, Lord of the Gopis, please hear my request. I am a wicked materialist, always addicted to worldly desires, and no good qualities do I possess. You are my only hope, and therefore I have taken shelter at your lotus feet. I am now your eternal servant. O Gopinath, how will you purify me? I do not know what devotion is, and my materialistic mind is absorbed in fruitive work. I have fallen into this dark and perilous worldly existence. O Gopinath, everything here is your illusory energy. I have no strength or transcendental knowledge, and this body of mine is not independent and free from the control of material nature. O Gopinath, this sinner who is weeping and weeping begs for an eternal place at your divine feet. Please give him your mercy. O Gopinath, you are able to do anything, and therefore you have the power to deliver all sinners. Who is there more of a sinner than myself? O Gopinath, you are the ocean of mercy. Having come into this phenomenal world, you expand your divine pastimes for the sake of the fallen souls. O Gopinath, I am so sinful that although all the demons attained your lotus feet, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has remained in worldly existence. So, now one might think, well, if he actually feels this way, he must be quite unhappy. But the difference is that his feelings are generated by a different consciousness than we have. So if we feel this way, we would feel unhappy. But his feelings are generated from love. And the best example I could give is, after you get 2 PhDs, you start to realize you don't know anything about that subject. When you're 16, you think you know everything, right? So they were wondering, why is someone who's so elevated denigrating themselves so much, making it sound like they have no devotion. It's because they have it. It is said the wise man is one who realizes he knows nothing, and the fool is the one who thinks he knows everything. So when you elevate yourself spiritually, you naturally become more humble. That's a byproduct. You're actually better, but you think you're lower. And so therefore, when one progresses spiritually, they become more humble. When one is arrogant, it's not a sign of spiritual advancement. Oh, I'm great, I'm fine, everything's good, I'm full of self-confidence and so on. And we might think, oh, that's good. But if there's arrogance there, it's generally a sign of a lack of spirituality. And if there's humility, there's a sign of spirituality. And the humility makes a devotee feel that I don't have love of God, I don't have love of Krishna, I don't have good spiritual qualities, but it doesn't make him feel depressed. It makes him feel like you feel when you're hungry. You want to eat, you have good digestion. So hunger is good. If you're never hungry, you'll never eat. So, if you're starving for 10 days, hunger is bad. But if you're hungry after 4 or 6 hours, that's good. That means you're healthy. And that means you'll be able to digest your next meal. So that when he's saying, I'm lacking, it's actually a positive. It's creating a positive emotion towards Krishna. It's bringing him closer. It's like we learn about separation from the Guru, separation from Krishna. And so it said separation makes the heart grow fonder. So in a sense, the further away you are, the closer you are. The more you think about the person when they're further away. So that means when you go away from the person, you're thinking about them, which means you're closer to them. And when you're with them, you may not think about them, which means, in a sense, you're further away. I'll wait till they finish whatever they're doing, because it seems so attractive, whatever it is they're doing. So I'm just sitting here, but they're moving around. It's more exciting. Right? If you move, people follow you. If you sit, they get bored. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Anyway, the basic idea is that what appears negative in this sense is positive. And then you may wonder, well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is writing this song, and he's very spiritually advanced. Is he actually feeling this, or is he just taking the part of people like ourselves and praying and showing us how to pray? And Srila Prabhupada said he actually feels this. Now, this is not something that you can imitate, but we may feel this way. Generally, you won't feel this way when you begin Krishna consciousness. I'm so bad, I'm so sinful. Nobody thinks that way when they begin spiritual life. It's only later on they start thinking. And so someone may say, well, you're regressing. There's a story of 2 disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, and they had been disciples for over 20 years. And they one day told him, we don't think we're making any spiritual advancement. 20 years and nothing. And he said, very good. So they were confused. Why very good? He said, because if you came to me and said we're making spiritual advancement, I would be worried that you've become proud. So the fact that you feel you're not is a sign you've become humble. And so sometimes the devotee will say, I have no humility, which is a sign that they have it, because when they first began Krishna consciousness, they didn't say that. Nobody says that in the beginning, I have no humility. They say it later, because they later on, as they progress, they realize they don't have it. In the beginning, it's harder to realize. In the beginning, we think, no, I'm very spiritually evolved. And then when you spiritually evolved, you realize how spiritually devolved you actually are. It's a paradox. So because they felt that they weren't progressing, he was very happy. Oh, very good. I'm very happy to see you're not making progress. That's not what he was saying. But that's what it sounded like to them. And so they were confused. Guru Maharaj, I'm becoming very, very advanced. And so then the spiritual master is very concerned. Oh, my disciples are becoming proud. Because the sign of advancement is that I think I'm not advanced. Yeah. And the sign that I'm not advanced is I think that I'm better than everybody. This is the paradox of spiritual life. As you progress and become better, you think others are better. And so the highest devotee, he thinks everyone's better. And the lowest devotee thinks, I'm better. Everyone should follow me. I know more. That's the paradox. So, what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is feeling is not what we feel when we begin. His feelings are generated by actual love, by actual purity. Because he's so pure, he realizes, or he feels, I wouldn't say realizes, but because he's so pure, he feels impure. That's the nature of purity, that you feel impure. But you're so close to Krishna, that's the sign that you will feel, or because you're close, you will feel that you're far. And if you're far, you'll feel you're close, because you don't realize how far you are. Because if you don't know what love is, you may think you have it. If you know what it is, you realize it's a big thing and it takes a lot. A lot of people say, I love God. That means, no, it means you don't know what love is. I love my stomach, yeah. You think about your stomach a couple times a day? Yeah. You ever get really hungry? All you can think of is your stomach? You ever had that? Yeah. I have to eat right now. You can't think of anything. So when you love God, you think of Him like a hungry man thinks of his stomach. You can't stop thinking about Him. You can't stop thinking about other people and the welfare of other people. You can't stop thinking about service. So unless we have some experience of that, we could mistake that we actually have love when we don't. Now, when we begin spiritual life, at a certain point, we start to understand these things, that we start to become more aware of our deficiencies, many of which we weren't aware of before we began practice. And so that can become discouraging. But in fact, it's a sign of encouragement. Because if you become aware of an obstacle you're facing, or a contamination, or a deficiency, and you become discouraged, maybe even depressed, because of that awareness, that's the wrong way to take it. Because whatever you've become aware of is something that already existed within you that you weren't aware of before. So the fact that you're aware of it means you're making spiritual progress. And the fact that you weren't aware of it before means you were in ignorance about something that you need to deal with or work on. So we have the example Prabhupada has given. You're cleaning and you pick up the rug and so much dirt comes out. So the house actually gets dirtier when you clean it. If you're moving the fridge and moving furniture around, and so much dirt comes out. So if so much dirt comes out, then you think, oh, the house is getting clean. This is good. More dirt. The more dirt, the better, right? Oh, whoever gets the most dirt gets a sweet bowl. Like that's good. Dirt's coming out. And somehow or other, when we find the dirt, we don't celebrate. We become sad. But actually, we're just discovering something which is already inside, so we can celebrate. Oh, I've finally today realized how stupid I am. That's kind of depressing. Or I finally today realized how arrogant I am. Or I finally today realized how insensitive I am. Or I finally today realized how envious I am, how jealous I am. I'd never realized this before. I thought I was pretty much perfect. Or at least I didn't realize the depth of my jealousy or envy or lust or greed or anger and so forth. I didn't notice it. Now that I'm becoming purified, I start to notice it. So what does that mean? That means you're noticing something that was always there, that you never noticed. That means you're making progress. Celebrate. Congratulations. Oh, I've noticed I'm so greedy. Congratulations. You finally noticed it. After millions of lifetimes, this might be the first lifetime in which you noticed it. Congratulations. Give yourself a pat on the back. You're doing well. You have a pain in your body. You go to the doctor. You go to a bad doctor and he says, I can't find anything wrong. And then you walk out and you think, this is not good because I walked in with the pain, he couldn't find the cause, and I'm walking out with the pain. If he would find the cause, then we could do something about it. So it's the same thing with a bad quality. If you find it, you can do something about it. So congratulations, you found it, now you can work on it. If you don't find it, you can't do anything about it, and it festers inside of you. So we therefore have the challenge of being able to be introspective enough and humble enough to start recognizing our faults, our weaknesses, our character defects, and all the contamination within ourselves. And at the same time, remain enthusiastic, which is seems to be a contradiction, right? In some religious traditions, they don't say that. They actually dwell on these faults with great sadness, despondency, lamentation, and so on, as a means of purification. So there is some validity to that. But if that lamentation and despondency does not become a source eventually of moving us forward and inspiring us, then it will take us down, and that therefore is not useful. And we would say that is symptomatic of something which is not Krishna conscious, because it's not moving you towards Krishna. So another title for this talk is Feeling Good About Feeling Bad. So you realize what's wrong with you and you feel bad. But how do you feel good about feeling bad? Because you're happy that you've recognized it. And if you take it in the right way, it can actually enthuse you when you find out what's wrong, because now you can fix it. Like a person who fails and takes it the right way becomes kind of encouraged by the failure, because he realizes, well, that didn't work, so we can eliminate that. Now I'm one step closer. Yeah, Edison. Anyone who understands failure in the proper context is not discouraged by it. It's just information of what didn't work. And you have to try it. How will you know if it... How do we know we should do this? My answer is, do it and you'll find out. That's the best way. How do I know if I should go right or left? Go right or left and you'll find out. If you don't end up where you're trying to go, sometimes you don't know. You're in the middle of nowhere and there's no one to ask. There's no internet. You have to make a decision, and that's the best way to know, is make a decision. So failure is not a problem. Failure is information. But failure can be a source of tremendous, tremendous inspiration. Because sometimes when we fail, when we make a mistake, and we realize we shouldn't have made it or we didn't have to make it, we reprimand ourselves in a way that we become inspired never to make that same mistake again. So that in that case, in some cases, it was actually necessary to make that mistake, because that mistake now pushed our determination in a particular way. So I did this, and now I realize it was the wrong thing. I'll never do that again. So that's good. You'll never slip down that crevice, into that canyon ever again. But you had to slip down it to know that was the wrong way to go. And if you didn't slip, you wouldn't know. Sometimes that's the only way we can learn. And so if we take failure as a learning experience, if we take it as information of what we need to work on, and don't become discouraged, but actually become encouraged that now I'm clear on what I have to work on, then you can feel good about feeling bad. Oh, it was good. Recently, this happened to me. I did something which didn't work out the way I intended, and then I realized I shouldn't do this. So I committed to myself that, okay, don't ever do this again. So it was good. So I don't have to worry that I'll ever be tempted or in any way think that doing this is useful or good, because I fully realized it wasn't. And so it's actually helped me. It's creating some commitment to a certain behavior, commitment to avoid a certain behavior. So perhaps we could say it was necessary to make the mistake. Fortunately, the mistake didn't destroy me, but it was necessary to make a mistake and make a wrong decision in order to know this was a wrong decision. But I fortunately didn't fall off the cliff. So sometimes we can see it that way, that maybe we thought doing something was the right thing and we find out it isn't. And now we have that information for the rest of our life, that this is not to be done. And that was the only way I could learn. So that's good. So often making a mistake here or there becomes a huge learning experience for the rest of our life. And it edifies a certain kind of attitude or behavior for the rest of our life. And maybe we would have never understood that if we hadn't made the mistake. And sometimes it's just the way it is. So rather than lament, which is kind of natural if you make a mistake, but at least if we take it in a positive way, that now I've learned something, and this learning experience was very good, I can be happy in the sense that I made a mistake. I can be happy about feeling bad about what I did. Now, then you might ask, well, if I do something wrong, shouldn't I feel guilty? And guilt is not a happy feeling. And the answer is yes and no. Naturally, if we do something wrong, we will feel guilty if we have any kind of conscience. And that guilt is just a little voice saying you did something wrong. If we do something and it's not wrong, we won't feel guilty because it's not wrong. It doesn't violate our values. So when something some action or words violates our values, then we feel guilty, and guilt is just telling us you shouldn't have done that. That was the wrong thing. That goes against what you believe. That goes against your values, or goes against the instructions of your guru or shastra. So in that sense, guilt is like a GPS. Turn around, like when you don't follow your GPS, and then it has to recalibrate. So guilt is something like, okay, you did the wrong thing, now go to the next corner and make a U-turn. So you make up for it. And so, in that sense, guilt is just Krishna's way of telling us you have to recalibrate your actions. You did something wrong. It made you feel bad because it was wrong. Feeling bad is how you become purified. Should I feel guilty if I do something wrong? Should I feel remorseful? Yes. Just enough guilt and just enough remorse to rectify it. Not so much guilt and so much remorse that I give up and say, what's the use? Why try? That's not useful. So that degrades something which is of value, like guilt and remorse. It degrades it into the mode of ignorance where it works against you. So there is also always a healthy way and an unhealthy way to understand something or to deal with something that didn't go well. And like an unhealthy way would be that you commit a mistake and you don't admit it and you don't do anything to rectify it. Or you go into some kind of denial and you don't even feel guilty about doing something wrong because you won't admit it. So that's an unhealthy way to deal with it. The other unhealthy way is that it's obviously wrong, and then you go into some kind of depression and you don't try to rectify yourself because you feel that you can't or you won't succeed. So the healthy way is to recognize the mistake, to regret it, and then to rectify it. And although it sounds strange, one of the most healthy ways to deal with a problem is when you become aware of it, to become enthusiastic, which is kind of counterintuitive. Why would you become enthusiastic when you become aware of a problem? And the reason is because if you don't become enthusiastic, you may not be able to deal with the problem. I see it like a hill. You're walking and then there's a hill. So you prepare yourself. You're going to have to put in more energy. Or if you're on a bicycle, you can start pedaling faster, build up momentum, and you know you're going to have to pedal hard to get up the hill. So you prepare yourself. Of course, the other option is just look at the hill and go home. Turn around and go, oh, there's a hill. Right? So when there's an obstacle or a problem, those are the two ways we can deal with it. We can say, oh, the hill's there, I have to try harder. I have this weakness, therefore I have to try harder than he does because he doesn't have that weakness. And you might say, well, that's not fair. It's not fair that I have the weakness. It's not about fair or not fair. It's just you have it, he doesn't. And therefore, you're going to have to work on this. And you're going to have to try harder in this area than he has to try. It's just the way it is. And that's how we have to accept it. It's a hill. The hill's not going away. If you want to go where you're going, you have to go up the hill. And therefore, just put out your energy. And so, what the weak person does when they see the hill is they sit down and cry, oh, there's a hill, it's too steep, I can't go up it. And they cry their way home. And they don't go where they wanted to go. And the strong person sees the hill and says, okay, let's put more energy into this. So the hill, like sometimes it's said you need a problem just to become strong, or you need a problem to calibrate where you stand within a situation. Like I had some heart trouble, and they put you on this machine. It's what do you call it? It's a treadmill. But they make you walk really fast and a high incline, and they just make you walk till you just go, oh, I can't do it anymore. And they do that to test your heart. And so it puts a lot of stress on your body, but it's necessary to test. You need the stress to test your heart, to see how strong your heart is. So sometimes we need stressful situations or obstacles to test our strength, for us to just know how strong we are. Maybe you thought you were very humble, and one day I tell you you're a fool and an idiot, and you punch me in the face. And then you realize, oh, I'm not as humble as I thought I was. Right? How are you going to know how humble you are unless somebody tells you you're a fool? Because you can think you're the humblest guy around if you've never been in a situation where anyone's testing you. Or you could think you're the most compassionate or whatever. But sometimes we need a test. We need someone to treat us like a piece of dirt before we can understand. Am I really kind? Am I compassionate? Can I be kind to this person? He treats me like dirt. And we say things, how can you be kind to a person who's not kind to you? And so, okay, that's how you think. Now you know you need some work to do. Or this person hurt me, I become resentful. Or this person criticizes me and I criticize them back. We need these things to evaluate how we're doing. So if someone says to me something nasty and I retaliate, and then I go home and I regret it, I feel upset that I acted that way. Okay, so now how do I process that? Well, I think, okay, why did I react that way? How will I deal with this next time? So it can all be positive. The bad experience then becomes positive because it makes me reflect on where I'm at. Like we say, if you squeeze an orange, then orange juice comes out because that's what's inside the orange. And if you're squeezed, what will come out of you is what's inside of you. So sometimes people squeeze us, not sometimes, all the time. We're squeezed. And then all these things come out of us. And we always want to say, well, Punya, it's your fault. You make me angry. But he's just a catalyst for my inability to control my anger. So it's not him that makes me angry. I'm unable to control my anger. And he's showing me that reality. That's how we think. And then I go home and I think, oh, I really failed today. He pushed my buttons and I got angry. That's discouraging. That can be depressing. But at the same time, it shows me I need to work on this. So that's good. So though I feel bad, it can generate some inspiration to work on this. So that I go and start reading in Prabhupada's books about anger, what causes anger, how to control it. I start reflecting, why did I get angry when he said that? What's going on? And then I start to work on it. And then I come to some realizations. And next time it happens, I don't react the same way. So that was good. So that bad event was actually good. That bad feeling generated some impetus to become better. So if you practice spiritual life, and if you become purified, gradually you're going to become more and more aware of your faults, and you'll have to be able to know how to deal with them in a positive way. Otherwise, the more you become aware of your faults, the more discouraged, the more depressed you may become. And you may think, I have so many faults, what's the even point of anything? What's the point of even trying? I think I get rid of one and another one shows up. Well, that's true, but we've cultivated these faults. So there's no one to blame but ourselves. And they're not going to go away if you don't work on them. So it's just part of the process of being able to accept this reality and then processing it in a positive way. It is going to be hard sometimes to admit that we have certain faults because we may not see ourselves as a person with that fault, and someone may tell you, you have this fault, and you'll go into denial. This happens all the time. The fault is obvious. It's so black and white obvious, and someone will tell you, and you'll just find fault with them. You won't admit it, and you'll dig into them and tell them how bad they are. Isn't that interesting? Yes? Isn't that interesting? You may have a fault that's so obvious to everyone in the world, And it's just amazing, it's not obvious to you, and it's amazing that you blame everybody and don't take responsibility for your action. Why? The need to be right, the need to be honored, the need to be accepted, the need to be respected, all these things can block our ability to understand a problem that's obvious. It's obvious to the universe. It's just not obvious to us. We're too close to it. Yes? As you progress spiritually, you become more humble and you become more, number one, willing to be introspective, and number two, able to be introspective. It's one thing to be willing, doesn't mean you're able. Yeah, I'm very introspective. Well, what faults have you found? Nothing. Well, you have to be willing. And so the false ego sometimes will have a difficult time admitting a fault, because if I don't believe I have that fault, it's very difficult to see it, because we're already convinced we don't have it. So if you're convinced you don't have it, you can't see it, although everyone else can see it. So it takes some learning how to be more objective about ourselves, to acknowledge a fault that we previously thought we don't have, or we previously thought we could never have. We're not that kind of person. We don't see ourselves that way. No, I see myself as a kind person, a compassionate person, a sensitive person, an understanding person. And then someone tells you, you don't understand anything I say. And you get offended. Say, how can you say that? I'm an understanding person. We don't have the objectivity to see it. Or if we have low self-esteem, then certainly we can't listen to anybody tell us there's anything wrong with us, because that would just devastate us. So it makes it even more difficult to be introspective. Or if we're arrogant, extremely difficult to be introspective, because we can't admit we have any faults, because we think we're great, and we need to think we're great, because that's where we get our so-called strength, although it's not a strength, but that's how we cope with the world, through arrogance. And what is the word? One-manship? You have to be over and people, and feel yourself better, and you'll get strength. Here's a little formula for you. That success is a mathematical formula. From the time it takes you to become aware of a problem to the time it takes to solve the problem will determine how quickly you become successful. So let's say you have a problem. It takes you 20 years to be aware of it, although your wife told you every day for the last 20 years you have that problem. But finally, after 20 years, the bells and whistles went off in your head, and you finally realize you have the problem. So that means you carried the problem for 20 years. Now you have to work on it. And maybe you'll be resistant to working on it because it's difficult to work on. And so maybe you'll try to work on it, then you'll give up, then you'll try, then you'll give up, and maybe you spend another 20 years before you solve it. So that problem affected you for 40 years, and you could have solved it in 1 or 2 days if you would have just been introspective enough to admit it and start working on it. Or you could have solved it in a week, or even a month, or even a year, but not 40. So think of a problem you have right now that you would be terrified to have to deal with, to have to face it if that problem were personified as some person in front of you right now, and you'd be terrified to deal with it. That's the problem that you need to work on. And the more you procrastinate working on it, then the longer you carry that problem. And so normally when we look at that problem that we resist, we feel fearful of admitting it, or fearful of dealing with it, because we don't even know how to deal with it. Now, step back from that problem just for a moment and think, wouldn't my life be better if I didn't have that problem? Of course it would be. Because that problem I resist is probably the biggest problem I face. And that's why I resist it, because it's so difficult to deal with. But wouldn't it be good if I didn't have that problem? Of course it would be. And that's how we feel good about feeling bad, because we think, if I can go through all the pain of dealing with this problem, it's going to be so much better when it's gone. My life is going to be so much better. I'm sure you could think of 2, 3, 4, 5 problems that if you could solve, you practically would have no problem in your life, and you would practically have no problem being Krishna conscious. Isn't it? You could isolate those. If I just didn't have this, check it off the list, right? And most of those problems are so difficult to deal with, we don't deal with them. Or we don't deal with them sufficiently or efficiently. We don't put the energy into it because it's painful. Or maybe we don't know how to deal with them. We're just confused. Or maybe we're frightened to deal with them because we feel we'll fail. And that becomes feeling bad about feeling bad, about feeling bad, about feeling. That's feeling bad about feeling bad, because we don't deal with it. And as soon as you deal with it, you will feel good, because that problem is weighing you down for years. And as soon as you look at it in the face and say, okay, we're going to deal with it, and start solving it, you'll feel fantastic because you're dealing with it. And you'll never be happy locking a problem in the closet or running away from it or suppressing it. You'll never feel happy. And we think we'll feel happy by hiding from it, but we'll only feel happy by dealing with it. And we're so resistant to deal with it. But once you start dealing with it, you'll start feeling good about feeling bad. Because you realize that bad feeling, I could use that as an impetus to isolate this problem. Anytime you feel a resistance to dealing with a situation, the natural reaction is to somehow or other just don't deal with it. Don't think about it, ignore it, lock it in the closet, pretend it's not a problem or it's not that serious, or just try to hold it down. Every time it pops up, just push it down. That's the natural reaction, and that is detrimental. We want to develop the attitude is when we see the problem, just like in the prayer of Gopinath, Bhaktivinoda Thakur he's not denying the problem, he's admitting it, and he's praying to Krishna, please help me with this. There's no denial. And this is part 1 of Gopinath. There's part 2, and there's other songs where he goes through his whole life about how bad he was, and how materialistic he was, and how happy he was when people suffered, and how unhappy he was when people were happy. Things of this nature. He's admitting it, he's dealing with it. He's not running away from it. So that's the example that we have in our tradition. They don't run away from it, they admit it, they confront it, and they pray to Krishna to help them. So and then the problems become sources of strength, because once you overcome it, you become so much stronger. If you overcome one problem, you start to build up the muscle to overcome the next and the next, because you're building up the muscle to face it instead of run away from it. So feeling bad, feeling resistant is just a laser on where we need to work. And if we don't pay attention to the laser, then that problem continues, and it handicaps us to one degree or another. And as I said, the time it takes from the point you realize, not the time it takes from the point you have the problem till you solve it, but the time it takes from when you realize you have the problem till you solve it. And why carry problems your whole life when you don't have to, if you just deal with them? So, I wonder if I'm allergic to this garland. We will find out in a minute. If he starts sneezing, we'll definitely know. So I would like to stop here. And I had a very funny experience today. I actually gave a lecture on this in 2012. And I gave it with my daughter when she was 11. And she practically said everything I just said at the age of 11. We had discussed it. We had gone to a festival, and we were driving back 5 hours. And I said, I'm going to give a class on this topic. You want to help me? She said, okay. So we discussed the whole thing. And she remembers everything I tell her. So she was just like explaining everything like she's a 35-year-old girl when she was 11. It was so funny. I was gonna bring it and play it for you, but I forgot to bring my computer. But I'll bring it another time. Give you a few minutes. It's hilarious because it's like exactly what I say. And she's 11. She said, if you have a problem, it's just Krishna challenging you. You have to work harder. It's just a test. Krishna, he's satisfied if you push through. He just wants to see. It's so funny. So you have any questions? I sent the lecture to my wife for her to hear. She'll love it. Yeah. Yes, questions, comments, arguments. Yes.
You mentioned about anger.
Yes.
Specifically from a negative point of view, that anger is not good for us. But can anger be used positively? And if yes, how do we know that we're using it positively?
Yeah, you can use it positively. Generally, when I speak of what common problems are. So commonly anger is a common problem for most people. And most people don't use it benevolently. Most people use it malefically. Most people are angry not because it has any useful purpose, but because they can't control themselves and something happened that they didn't like. So yes, if you're talking about anger which is benevolent, then it's taking that angry energy and putting it to good use, and that angry energy is under your control. So you look at the world. The devotee sent me a few lectures today on the effects of pornography, and I watched, one of them was a TED Talk. It was just amazing of how young people are being, what did she call it? I don't know, maybe she called it sexualized, subconsciously, to flaunt their bodies sexually at a very early age. And the things she said were so alarming and disturbing to me. It made me angry. And it made me want to do something, to think, well, what could I do to help young people understand what's happening? Especially he was talking about the effects of pornography and how it's twisting the minds of young boys, because young boys can get it on their phones. And so if an anger is giving us energy to do something, to solve a problem, yes, that anger is good. Martin Luther King was angry. So he headed up a civil rights movement out of his anger. But that anger was not an anger of hatred. Prabhupada said that Arjuna didn't want to fight, and he had to fight, and Krishna spoke to him to make him angry enough to fight. But it wasn't an anger of hatred or resentment, it was an anger against injustice. So if you see injustice and you're angry, and you want to do something to fight injustice, then that anger is good for the world and doesn't degrade you. But you could be angry at the injustice, and there can be very unhealthy ways of dealing with it, like going out on the street and bombing something or beating up somebody, or, you know. So you have a good cause, but your anger is controlling you. You know, you can throw rocks at policemen. So that just means you're out of control. When I was a student, there was a big riot at my university. And the university had made a decision to not have they were going to create a department for African studies. And so there's many African Americans in America. And the university decided against it, and there was a big riot. And so lots of people lived in that town, lots of hippies who were not students. And they were, to show their protest, they were breaking the windows of shops on the street that leads up to the university. They were destroying traffic signals. It was like, how is that going to change anything? It was just, you know, useless anger of people who were so-called having a cause, but basically just rebels, and they're ineffective. Of course, the example that Prabhupada always gives is Hanuman. He used his anger to serve Lord Ram. At one time, a devotee had written Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, what should I do with my anger? And Prabhupada said, oh, you have something that you're not giving to Krishna, you're not using for Krishna. So like it's an energy. So everything can be used. Anger is like a light. You can turn the light off and on, right? So if you can turn your anger on and use it for benevolent purpose, that means you're in control of it. Okay, we have a cause, we're angry, that anger is inspiring us. Now we've done what we've needed to do, and we turn our anger off. We don't need it anymore. But if the anger is controlling us, then it's just under the influence of the modes of nature. Shishigonitai ki jai. Saraswati Deve Gauramani. There are many great things have been done because of anger. Many great movements have been started because people were angry at the injustices or the corruption. There's so many people in America now who are very angry with what our president does. And they're trying to do something. Not because they dislike him or they hate him, but they feel that it's not in the interest of the people. So they're angry. There's a whole movement to impeach him. They're angry. So, you know the saying, hate the sin, not the sinner. So, if you're angry at the sin and not angry at the sinner, then probably you're in control of your anger. Kshatras, the warrior class in Vedic times, were forgiving. That was their nature. Forgiveness was a quality of Kshatras, as well as Brahmins, as well as Shudras, just not Vaishyas, for some reason. I don't know why. Or they don't need it. But Bhishma Dev said, forgiveness is one of the qualities of civilized human beings, and to not become angry is another quality of civilized human beings. So that's an interesting meditation. That anger is considered an uncontrolled anger, which is not benevolent, is considered the quality of uncivilized people. Even resentment is considered the character of uncivilized people. That human beings should be controlled and forgiving. That's interesting. It's not even describing it as something spiritual, just as something human. Is that okay? As far as anger, which controls us, then you want to look at what's generating the anger. If you have anger issues, then it's probably you're going to have to look at the situation differently, because there's something that's acting as a catalyst for your anger. Maybe you want someone to be a certain way, or you want a situation to be a certain way, and you can't control it. Either you can control the person, or maybe you want yourself to be a certain way and you're not controlling yourself. You want to look at the cause, and then often it just requires a change of attitude. Oh, I will have to accept this is how this person is. I will have to accept this is how this situation is. Or I have to accept the reality of what I can control and what I can't control. And that, or I may need to look at people differently, expect less of them, or look at them more kindly or more lovingly. And that can neutralize the cause of your anger. So you want to look at that cause and then see how you can remove that cause. And the more we're accepting and the more generous we are with people, the less angry we'll get. That's my experience. And those are both qualities of someone who's spiritually advancing. They're kinder and they're detached. They're more accepting. They're not controlling what they can't control. If you don't want any friends, try to control everybody and everything. You'll very quickly be living alone the rest of your life. That's for certain. And a lot of times, in controlling anger, it's just coming to a point of acknowledging that I can't control this situation, or I, as a person, am only capable of achieving a certain level of success, and I'm angry because I can't achieve more. And so it's a matter of accepting realities. This is what I can do. This is what this other person can do. This is the situation which I'm in now, and I've done everything I can, and this is how it is. And once that acceptance is there, often that will solve the problem, because that's what's causing your frustration. Does that make sense? So everyone's situation is unique, so I can't speak for everyone, but these are things to look at along with expectation. Why am I upset? Because I'm expecting this person would act in a certain way, and they didn't. Then the question would be, well, if you didn't have that expectation, would you have been upset? Answer generally would be no, I wouldn't. So you have to be careful of expectations. And then you want to understand, why do I have those expectations in the first place? What's generating them? Is it some weakness in myself? That I need people to act a certain way?
Could be a close relationship, due to close relationship sometimes, when you expect certain things from some people.
That's there, but it could be, yes. But the difficulty will be is you're expecting something they can't do. or they can't do yet. Or you're expecting something nobody could do. That's sometimes there. Unrealistic expectation for anyone, not just that person.
So if we are intelligent, we understand that that particular person is not capable of that level.
Yeah.
So having that expectation from them is asking
Exactly.
trouble. So
Yeah, just like you may be a very committed person, and so it would be difficult to work with people who aren't committed. But maybe the person may be a good person, they're just not good with commitment. And then you understand that. So you kind of make peace with their inability to commit. And so then you don't expect it. And then you're okay. You know, like some people are always late. And so no matter how many times they tell you they're going to be on time, you know they're going to be late. And so when they're late, it doesn't bother you because you didn't expect it. Right? And you just say, that's so-and-so. We've spoken to him 108 times about being on time, and he's never on time. And so you don't get upset. You just laugh when he comes late. You know, call him Johnny come lately or whatever. Because otherwise you'll drive yourself crazy. Now, you may say, well, we don't want you on the council because we need to start on time and you never come on time. So you can also do that, just so you don't have to deal with it if it's necessary that everyone comes on time. But you deal with it in a way that you don't have to perpetually get frustrated. Right? It requires a certain level of detachment to be able to live that way. And detachment follows with that attitude of acceptance. Because without that detachment, without the acceptance, the detachment follows the acceptance. Without the acceptance, you can't detach. Or you could say detachment brings acceptance. But look at the world. How much of the world do you control? And so we all are trying to control more than we can. And that's why we get frustrated. There's some things we would like to do or like to achieve. We will never be able to do or achieve. We're not endowed with those abilities in this life. And it can be very frustrating until you realize, well, I can achieve this, but I can't achieve that. Okay, well, just do that and be happy. No, but I have to do this, this, and this because everyone's doing this. You don't have to. That's your idea. But you're good at this, do that, be satisfied. Then once you no longer have to do this, you're not frustrated. So a lot of this frustration is coming from our own need to judge, expectation, need to control, need to, demands we put on ourselves. Right? Yes? So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the sages, the sadhus, they strenuously try to control anger. Okay. And anger is an enemy. Krishna describes it as one of the enemies, or the gates leading down. So we should be interested in learning how to control it. Sometimes we think, well, if I just become more Krishna conscious, it will be controlled. That's true. But if you're angry, how will you become more Krishna conscious? So you have to control it. You have to control it to be Krishna conscious. And then when you're Krishna conscious, it will automatically be controlled. So sometimes we get slipped up there. You think, well, I'll just be Krishna conscious, then I'll transcend my anger. But if you're being controlled by anger, how are you going to become Krishna conscious enough to transcend it? So you have to at least practice controlling it.
We get all these qualities from Krishna. Krishna, anger also comes from him because we get all the qualities. So in real terms, does Krishna ever gets angry like that?
Yeah, gets angry all the time. But his anger is fun and exciting, and it would make a lot of good movies. The thing about Krishna is whatever he does is beneficial for everyone, for the whole universe. But Krishna also comes to establish Dharma, so he's also angry with an injustice. But he's also beautiful when he's angry. And Radharani becomes angry. Because that will make Krishna happy.
Mother Yashoda becomes angry.
And it's all in the service of Krishna. And Krishna becomes angry with Mother Yashoda.
So does that mean chastising is legit in service?
If it gives Krishna pleasure. If you're a spiritual master and you have a disciple, and the disciple does something wrong, yeah, you have to chastise. That's your duty.
Amongst equals or...
No, equals share loving exchanges. Chastisement, it's rarely used, but if it is, it's by the father, teacher, or guru to correct a student.
I witness it getting oftenly used. I witness it oftenly getting used.
By equals or by superior?
Name all sorts of levels.
It should be.
The reverse order.
It should be used cautiously, and it should be used only if it's going to be beneficial. It's like, one devotee once told me something I appreciated. He said, after a teacher gives a class, you don't ask, did you teach the class well? You ask, did the students learn well? Because you could teach the class well and nobody learned anything. Right? So, what's the effect of your chastising? Did it produce any effect? He said, no, I chastised well. I read a book on how to chastise in 10 easy lessons. So I followed that book. And the next day, nobody came to the temple. So nobody appreciated it. Although you did it according to the book. You did an excellent job. First you appreciated them, then you pointed out their fault, then you let them know how dirty and bad they are, and what they have to do to repent, and so on. And nobody came back. So you did it perfectly, but you failed. So you always want to look at the result. Prabhupada, he was the guru, but he didn't chastise much because he saw better to encourage. So we always want to look at the result and evaluate, not by how well you executed, but by the result. Yes?
One thing I'm always sort of not quite sure of the line between fault finding and giving a proper feedback to improve the situation or some temple seva services.
Yeah.
So how do I know whether I have a good intention behind it and giving a feedback rather than fault finding?
I think we can start with what I just said. Is your criticism going to help? And does the person want it? Because if it doesn't want it, no matter how good it is, it's not going to help. So you may see somebody doing something wrong, but you might sense that they won't be open to good advice. So they're going to have to learn by making their own mistakes. You won't be able to guide them. So you may have to accept that. So in that case, if you're still finding fault, then it's your problem. If you ascertain that there'll be no value in your giving them advice, then if you continue to condemn or criticize, I would say that's a defect on your part. Do they want it? Are you in a position to give it? And will it be beneficial? And what's your motive in giving it? Your motive could be to prove that you're better than them. So, of course, that's the wrong motive.
I think it's the human nature that there will be only maybe once in a million who would like to accept their own mistakes. I mean, naturally they say, okay, I try my best, and what I did is correct. So finding the mistake and telling them, it's very, very hard to accept and get it.
Yeah, and then it would depend on what they've done. Because maybe what they've done is such that we can't allow them to continue doing that service in the wrong way. So we have to correct them. But that's not criticizing. That's just instructing. But to become Krishna conscious, obviously there has to be some willingness to take instruction. And to become a disciple, that means you have to be prepared to take instruction, which may include being shown that you've done something wrong. And it may take a sensitive person to be able to give that instruction. And if people sense that you care about them, they're more likely to listen. And if you have a good relationship, they're more likely to listen. And if you tell them that, I think this will help you, I'm only doing this to help you, they might be more likely to listen. But if they won't listen, even though they need the advice, it can be counterproductive to give it. Even sometimes Prabhupada wouldn't give advice because he knew the disciple wouldn't take it. So even sometimes the guru can't even give advice. What to speak of us? And those people promised as disciples to take advice, and even many of them won't take advice. They want to follow Krishna consciousness like a smorgasbord, just pick what they like. So the guru may give them instruction they don't like, so they don't want to hear it. That's unfortunate, but you're not the only one who has trouble. But as far as focusing on someone's faults, if it's not necessary, then that's a problem. I see your fault, but it's like not my business. So that means that there's a defect in me. What's so ironic about that sometimes is that sometimes we're not doing well. And so it's obvious we need to be working on ourselves. But instead of working on ourselves, we're finding what's wrong with him and him and him. So we put in energy to notice what's wrong with people who will never listen to us anyway. And that energy could have been used to improve ourselves, but we didn't have time because we were trying to improve others. So that's also a trap. Bhaktisiddhanta said, if you try to improve yourself, you'll have no time to fault find. Switch it around. If you're not trying to improve yourself, you have all kinds of time to fault find, to find faults in others, because you're not occupying yourself. And he always said that tendency we have to find faults in others, we should use to find those faults in ourselves, correct ourselves. So that's something to remember also. So even though he has a fault, you might consider, well, can I do anything? And even if I could do something, should I? Or would it be better I just focus on improving myself, setting a better example? Maybe they'll see it, or maybe they'll learn on their own over time. So these decisions have to be made. Anything else? Well, oh yeah, we're having a japa workshop on Saturday. And Sunday, yes. Which is a fantastic opportunity to improve your japa, which is thereby a fantastic opportunity to improve your Krishna consciousness. So I highly recommend it. And if you haven't signed up, you can sign up with Punya Shloka tonight or online. It's something we've developed over maybe 10 or 15 years. And it's quite effective in improving japa. And when people ask who should come, I say anyone who chants japa should come. If you own japa beads and you chant on them, then you should definitely come. And you won't regret it. You'll definitely not regret it. The only people who regret it, and I'm not just saying this because I'm advertising it, or it's like if you don't come, it's not like my life depends on you coming or not. I just feel that you would benefit tremendously if you do come. But I'm just serious. The only people who have any regrets about the japa workshop are the people who on Sunday night come to the feast and are told how good it was. This is just my experience. And they come, they say, I heard about oh, I should have come. I hear that mantra everywhere I go around the world. Oh, I should have come. They had some reason they couldn't come. And then they reflect, maybe that reason wasn't that good of a reason not to come. Maybe I should have come. Because they're hearing people say, oh, this really helped me. This was really good. I got so much out of this. My japa is so much better. And they're thinking, yeah, my japa is not that good. I should have come. They're the ones who regret it. The people who come do not regret having spent 2 days improving their japa. The ones who don't come are the ones who regret having not spent 2 days. That's my experience. And then Sunday night, all these people, when are you coming back to do a japa workshop? Like, come on. I just came to do it and you didn't come. No, we'll come next time. No, they don't. They'll have their own. If you have reasons to not come, you won't come, and even if you say you will. So I just say, whatever reason you have for not coming, it's a really bad reason, in my personal opinion. But it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn, but I'm just speaking from experience of the response I get from people who come and people who don't. So, yes?
Would it be okay to join a bit late? Because, there are reasons why I can't reach one headset.
Why don't we get one woman to take care of all the kids? Or 2 women. If I were God and could control everything, I would take you all away for 5 days somewhere in the middle of the desert. That's, Anyway, call up your mother-in-law and buy her a ticket and fly her over here. Take care of your son. Put him in a park and tie him up to a tree with a 50-foot rope and pick him up at 6 o'clock or 4 o'clock.
He has 2 soccer matches back to back.
Yeah.
So.
You have to fly with him?
No, but I have to take him from one place to the other.
There's no other mother that can pick him up and take him?
No, my husband will bring him back. He won't come. I'll come for the japa.
Okay, figure it out. Do something, right? So we have my books. Did you put out the
CDs as well.
The USBs?
Not the USBs, I mean the CDs there.
The USBs are in the that pouch, and then there's two printouts which show you what's on the USB. What? Of the Japa book's 8. The other book, what did we say last night? How much is it? Anyone remember? 14 or something. 10 US. And then there's ads for those in that black bag. There's printouts for those. There's printouts in the black bag. And then you can put the USBs on the printouts. It explains what's on them. And silver is 35 and gold is 50. There should be 2 of those.
Yep.
Okay? Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.